Spawn is one of the greatest properties to be released by Image Comics, and he is one of my personal favorite characters in all of media. I'm a huge fan of the comics, and I was super excited to find out there was an animated TV show pretty much like the whole time I've been alive. I've got about 3 episodes into the show when I stopped watching, and I decided I wanted to make a video about it because I believe it'd be cool to jump into the show and blindly review the episodes as I watch them for the first time. The story of Spawn provides one of the greatest adaptations of heaven and hell that I've seen in fiction, and I'm really interested to see the way the show adapts what the comics displayed so horrifically. From what I've seen online, I know that the show had diverged from the comics into its own story, and so I stopped watching before I broke into this new content. As I go through the episodes, I wanted to do something a little bit extra for fun for this first season and all the other seasons, I guess. So I'm not only going to be ranking the episodes, but I'll also be counting every time a character kills someone and tallying it next to their name. Some quick rules for that though. I'm going to be counting demons, but not zombies. Also, overkill does not count. He's similar to zombies, he comes back after dying sometimes. I'm just gonna leave him off the list. Don't fuck with him for this show. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick spoiler warning for the videos ahead, as well as a trigger warning because this show can contain some graphic content and disturbing topics such as sexual assault and child abuse. If those topics are too much for you, please watch with caution. I'll try not to dwell on the disturbing details in this series. However, I will be discussing the major plot points from each episode, so sometimes harsh topics will come up. Also, I recommend watching the show before this video because it's truly actually a masterpiece.
Cyan. You know her. You gonna help get the kid back? Find out who's got the girl. God, you... Move away from the child.
Now let me bring you into the story of Spawn. Created by Todd McFarlane in 1992, Spawn is one of Image Comics' most well-known properties, next to The Walking Dead and Invincible. If you like this video, I'll do an Invincible video. I really want to do an Invincible video. A few years after Spawn's first release, Todd McFarlane went to HBO to develop one of the first animated series to air on the channel. Spawn the Animated Series was a different kind of superhero cartoon. It was violent, had nudity, and some of the most grim topics to be in a cartoon that was airing at the time. HBO took a risk with the show and it paid off. People loved it, and Spawn was one of the biggest names in comics throughout the 90s, having crossovers with Batman, again Invincible, and even Sonic. Yes, the Sonic one's real. Even though Spawn was loved by people all around, it wasn't enough to save it from being cancelled. By the 3rd season of the show, the executives at HBO believed that the show was diving way too far into religious territory and often spent time in heaven and hell and too much time off-world. Now, like I said, I haven't seen the last season of this show, so I don't know what it really has to offer yet, but I'm both excited and sad to see what events lead this show into that spot where it needed to be cancelled. It's really upsetting to me that we're going into this series knowing that it has no ending, but from what I hear, it's worth the watch anyway. If you're watching this as a fan of the show and you know how it ends, please don't spoil it before I upload part 3 of this video. I would really like to come upon it naturally, and I wouldn't like it ruined for anyone else who hasn't seen it, for anyone else who's watching here. That's about all I wanted to say for this intro here, so let's get started with episode 1, Burning Visions. The episode begins in a warehouse full of random boxes and art supplies, and we're shown the creator of the show, Todd McFarlane, as he tells the viewer about a man named Spawn and how he made a deal with the devil and how he has all of eternity to think about his mistakes.
I'm Todd McFarlane, and I created Spawn.
This intro reminds me of these old Goosebumps intros that R.L. Stine would do at the beginning of the episodes. Not sure if they did it first though, most likely both a nod to the Crypt Keeper. I'm not sure who he's a nod to though, I think he's just like himself.
Now that wasn't too scary, was it? Let's ask my family. Mom? Dad? What did you think?
After the intro, we're brought into an alley where we hear the voice of an old man. The narrator tells of a new warrior who emerged from the darkness after over 400 years of lying dormant. I could be wrong, but I think this could be a reference to the medieval Spawn from the comics, one of Hellspawn's who came before Al Simmons and died probably around 500 years before the main story. Now I know that the Gunslinger Spawn would have been between both of them in the timeline, but he hasn't been created yet, so it makes sense that medieval Spawn was the last Spawn before Al Simmons. We then watch as 2 men walk through the alley on their way to meet with a man who had the last name Stevens.
Mr. Stevens?
Just as they find him cowering in the alley looking absolutely terrified, a gun clicks and Mr. Stevens is shot dead quickly in front of the 2 men.
We spoke on the phone.
A dark-coated figure emerges from the darkness, cutting the meeting short. The coated figure presses one of the men against a dumpster and shoots him without hesitation as a bolt of lightning strikes and we see a man in a red cloak perched atop a church cross. As the second man tries to run away, the coated man shoots him through the leg and questions him about if anyone else knows about the meetings, and the injured man replies nobody the best he can with the gun filling his mouth.
I'm waiting for your answers, smart boy.
Spawn watches from afar as a few more men in coats make themselves seen. They start to drench the man in gasoline as he pleads for them to let him go. As the lighter flicks, a voice strongly states to let him go from in the darkness. The man with the lighter is thrown out of the darkness and the lit lighter flies through the air, thankfully closing on the lid, putting out the flame and not igniting the drenched man. One of the coats begins shooting at Spawn, whose cape has grown bigger to make him appear much bigger than he is. Chains shoot out of the Spawn and wrap themselves around the shooter, and they throw him headfirst into a car's windshield. Spawn directs his attention to the third coated man as he draws his pistol. Spawn grabs his arm and points it back at him so hard that his elbow snaps, and after a simple "Who are you?" Spawn makes the man shoot himself in the head, and it's visible to us through the shadows. Just as you think the carnage is over, the man drenched in gasoline raises his gun. Spawn tells him he shouldn't shoot, but the man decides to try it anyway. The sparks from his gun ignites the gasoline that coats his body. This gives Spawn some PTSD that's straight from hell as the man screams burning. Al kicks a trash can and falls to the ground screaming about how he came back for this woman in his mind, but he can't remember anything else. I'm a really big fan of this opening. I feel like it introduces Spawn in a perfect light. We see him as he witnesses a situation in which someone is being hurt. He decides to act and save them, but he ends up making things worse, and he sheds more blood. This is a conflict that Spawn deals with heavily in the comics, especially early on, especially at the beginning when he had to remain a secret from the public. He constantly looks back at his action and reflects on what he could have done differently as to not have made things worse. And it's a huge struggle for him to realize that even though he's doing bad things, his actions do have a good outcome, but he just tends to focus on the bad things. Like in this opening scene, where he tries to save the man's life but ends up getting him killed. One could say he did good by getting 3 bad men off the street, but he focuses on the 3 lives that had been lost. It brings up a good question in my mind. Does having good intentions negate wrongdoing? It's a hard question to answer, and I think when it comes to Spawn, the answer is no. And the reason why he's such a compelling character is because he too does not believe he should be forgiven for some actions. I'm super interested in how this battle in his mind is explored throughout the show, and I think beginning the show with a scene like this was the perfect choice. After the narrator indicates that Spawn will need someone to show him the ropes of being a Hellspawn, we meet the clown.
Each is given their proper escort.
He comes down the alley admiring all of the damage that Al has done in it, calling him a born and bred killer, telling him he was hand-picked because of his skills. Though we're not told at the time what he was picked for just yet, the clown calls him a Hellspawn for the first time. I really enjoy Michael Nicholas's performance. He gives off a perfect combination of goofy and creepy, and his mysterious demeanor while also being crude is very well executed. I also want to take this moment to call attention to Keith David's amazing portrayal of Spawn. I don't think I can hear anyone else's voice in the place of his. It's up there with J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah and Kevin Conroy as Batman. A truly legendary performance. Al lifts his mask and reveals a face that looks like Freddy Krueger mixed with Voldemort. This upsets him. 2 of the homeless men that live in the alley appear to find Spawn weeping alone in the alley, the clown seeming to have disappeared. Al utters the name Wanda, believing she'll remember him, and the 2 homeless men discuss if he's on PCP or just lonely. As Spawn tells the 2 men to get lost, the narrator appears from the shadows to tell him some encrypted shit about him not remembering who he is, and that his old home will be war getting there.
You don't remember. It doesn't matter.
We are then brought back to the same crime scene where the men in coats were murdered. We learn from detectives Sam and Twitch that the men were mafia members, and a man named Tony Twist will be furious when she found out his 3 best hitmen were killed. They discuss that the other men were reporters and the first man killed was a homeless man. They suspect the reporters were trying to get intel on Tony Twist but were killed in the process. But they can't explain the homeless man just yet.
Washington, 3 dead hitters for Tony Twist. What about the other stiff?
Homeless.
In an old neighborhood, we see as Simmons watches his old house from behind a tree, triggering more PTSD. And it gets even worse when he sees his old best friend pulling out of the driveway, as the woman from his memories, we now known to be named Wanda, and a little girl kiss him goodbye.
Later, mister.
Bye-bye, sweetie.
This crushes Spawn as the clown returns to chastise Spawn for being hung up on a woman. He reveals that Spawn has been dead for 5 years, and we find out through a series of cruel jokes that Spawn used to be married to Wanda, and she now has a kid with his best friend, which is something he was unable to provide. Spawn attempts to ignore the clown as the clown explains how he died and went to hell and then made a deal with the devil to see his wife again.
We came back for her, Spawn. You came back for Wanda.
Then the clown disappears again. Spawn begins to spiral and takes a trip to the graveyard where he finds his tombstone. He digs up his body while crying out that he can't be dead. He digs until he reaches the corpse of his old body. He asks God why this is happening, as the corpse comes to life to answer his questions. He tells Spawn of the deal he made with the Malbolgia to see his wife, a deal with his soul.
You made a deal, you stupid son of a bitch.
Well, he's seen her, and now it's time to pay the price. The skeleton oozes green fluid onto Spawn's face as Spawn kicks the corpse off of him. Spawn reburies his body, then we hear Tony Twist over the phone talking to a man named Jason Wynn.
Cocksucker, shit, motherfucking prick! I'll take your fucking head, chop it off!
Tony is furiously screaming about the men that were killed in the alley, insisting this had to be work of a government assassin, insinuating Jason's men had something to do with it because that's his line of work.
I'll send you his liver and maybe a couple of fingers.
The newsmen have been dealt with.
After the phone call, we figured out that the men in the alleys were reporters, killed for following a lead that showed evidence of the senator's son, Billy Kincaid's child murders. Jason passes judgment towards the senator, and the call ends with the senator saying that he wouldn't understand since he doesn't have a son. The episode ends with an off-duty officer named Hector being pulled over by some corrupt cops who are about to beat him up for snitching. But as the beating begins, Spawn blocks a swing from the officer's baton. He is shot, and we see the first example of Spawn's powers when he heals the wound instantly. After knocking out all the cops and freeing Officer Hector, the clown appears to mock him once more.
Both a lot of blood and torn flesh and broken bones.
Though this episode isn't perfect by any means, I can confirm it's a fantastic intro to the Spawn story. It has a lot in it as well, introducing us to the clown, Tony Twist, Jason Wynn, and they even mentioned the Malbolgia, and hinted towards Billy Kincaid for the next episode. All of these plots would seem super difficult to mesh well together, with some focusing on the mafia, a love story, a murder mystery, or even a body horror that is Spawn himself, but the way these things are shown and explained in the show is just exquisite, and it feels like each subplot works so well to support the overall theme of good versus evil. So far the show is straying pretty close to the comics, and I've heard that that's not the case down the line. So it's nice to be able to start on familiar ground with all of this starting because of a bunch of killings. One thing I wanted to mention is the difference between the comics and the show. In the comics, Tony is after Spawn because he believes that he's ripping the hearts out of his men at the beginning of the series, and even though Spawn was framed by a character named the Violator, it starts a long-lasting feud between Spawn and Tony. Where the show differs from the comics is in that opening scene where Spawn actually does murder Tony's men through trying to protect someone. Though I love the Violator plot in the comics, I really do prefer the way that it's done in the show. I feel like this makes the events that happen later because of his rivalry with Tony more impactful and have them feeling more personal to him rather than just being an unlucky guy. Anyway, this is a marvelous first episode. I rank Burning Visions a 9 out of 10 and an A tier episode. It would be a 10, but like I said before, there's a lot crammed into this first episode, so the pacing can be off at times. So before we end this video, let's get into these kills. The first man to be killed in the show was Mr. Stevens, shot multiple times at the hands of the mobster. Kill 2 was the first reporter, shot in the head. Then kills 3 through 5 were the 3 mobsters killed by Spawn. One's head twisted backwards, one through a car windshield, and the last one's arm broken and shot in the head. Kill number 6 was the reporter who tried to shoot Spawn, which caused him to light himself on fire and burn to death. The last kill of the episode is kill number 7, and it was the officer Spawn threw through the window. I looked online and they said he was dead. If you're wondering why I haven't included Al Simmons on the list yet, it's because we get to see his death more fleshed out later in the story in the comics, and I assume the same thing will happen here. And I would rather count him when I can explain how he died. This is what our kill chart is looking like this episode, though. Spawn is in the lead with 4 kills, followed by 2 randoms in second and third place. This will definitely change as we go down the line though, and I'm curious if Spawn will be dethroned by the end of the series, since he is starting at number 1. Anyway though, this has been my episode on episode 1 of the Spawn series. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you guys want an episode 2 video, please like this video. Comment down below what I could do better in that next video. This is one of my first few videos I've ever made. So thank you guys so much for watching. Y'all have a good one.